The most subtle and perhaps most destructive delusion of the civilized mind is the belief in perfection. We are taught that life is a problem to be solved, and that the solution is to achieve a flawless, unblemished state of being. We believe that if only we could eliminate all our flaws, all our mistakes, and all our messiness, we would finally arrive at the state of happiness. This is the root of our chronic dissatisfaction. We are forever chasing a version of ourselves that is not here. The future perfect self becomes the tyrant of the present, perpetually condemning the self that actually exists. This is the prison of perfection, and its bars are woven from the word should. We spend our entire existence waging war against our own humanity. We desperately attempt to edit, refine, and polish our raw, spontaneous self into an image that is acceptable to the external jury, and, more tragically, acceptable to our own internal critic. This critic is a cruel master, demanding an impossible standard that can never be met. The critic is, in essence, the internalized voice of a rigid, unforgiving society that fears the chaos of genuine life. This internal tyranny is compounded by the external pressure of social media, where the illusion of universal flawlessness reinforces the belief that your private messiness is a unique defect. The entire operation of the ego is dedicated to sustaining this flawless illusion. The ego becomes the chief maintenance officer of the image, and its work is never done. Every conversation, every social media post, every decision is filtered through the lens of, does this maintain the facade? Does this protect the image from the dangerous reality of my imperfection? This filtering process consumes the energy that should be available for spontaneous living. The result is the crippling anxiety of the imposter syndrome. We feel like frauds precisely because we are successful in presenting a flawless image that we know, deep down, is a lie. The more successfully you perform perfection, the wider the terrifying gap between the mask and the face becomes. The applause for the image is the condemnation of the self. This condemnation whispers, you are being praised for a fiction, and the real you is inadequate. This is the ultimate existential exhaustion, the perpetual fear of being found out, of having the mask slip, of revealing the chaotic process beneath. The polished product. But the philosophical truth is that perfection is statuesque. It is dead. Life is inherently messy, chaotic, and continuous. The beauty of the universe is found not in its flawless symmetry, but in its spontaneous, unpredictable unfolding. A tree is perfect not because it never drops a leaf, but because it fully is a tree at every stage of its process, in its youth, its rot, its growth, and its eventual decay. To demand perfection of yourself is to demand that you cease to be a living process and become a finished object. You are rejecting the very nature of existence, which is change. To demand perfection is to fear spontaneity. Spontaneous action, the effortless movement that is the hallmark of health, is inherently unpredictable. It risks error. It risks revealing an unpolished truth. And so, the perfectionist, shackled by their image, must replace spontaneous living with neurotic calculation. They must plan every move, script every answer, and filter every feeling. This leads to paralysis of action, where the fear of making the imperfect step prevents any step from being taken at all. The freedom begins with the unconditional surrender to your own imperfection. You must realize that your flaws are not errors in the system. They are necessary components of your unique consciousness. They are the scars that provide wisdom. They are the texture that provides depth. When you stop fighting your own humanity, you stop being a prisoner. You cease trying to be a fixed monument and allow yourself to be a flowing river. The river does not apologize for its curves or its occasional mud. It simply flows. This is the radical truth. Perfection is the enemy of the real. The real is messy, spontaneous, and immediate. The moment you accept the truth that there is no flawless future state to arrive at, you become free to inhabit the rich, vibrant reality of the now. The future ceases to be a destination of self-improvement and becomes merely the continuous horizon of the present. The cure for the prison of perfection is not self-improvement, it is self-acceptance. It is the willingness to be utterly vulnerable, undefended, and completely here with all your flaws in full view. Because the only thing that truly matters is the effortless, spontaneous flow of the life that is already happening through you. Drop the stone of perfection and watch how easy it is to finally swim. This surrender is the answer to the comparison trap. We compare our raw, messy internal self with the polished, filtered image of others. When you realize that the flawless person on the screen is suffering from the exact same anxiety, the maintenance of their own prison, the comparison loses all meaning. You realize the game is a vast mutual hypnosis. The moment you break the spell by accepting your own raw reality, you are free from the need to compete with their polished lie. The entire social edifice built on envy and striving dissolves the moment you cease to participate in the demand for flawless performance. The only way to truly defeat the feeling of the imposter is to kill the image. Let the mask crack. Let your flaws be visible. Because the applause you receive for being genuine, though perhaps quieter, is the only sound that will ever affirm the real you. The applause for the image is condemnation. The acceptance of the self is liberation. The effort to be perfect is a deep betrayal of your own inherent value. You are perfect in the same way that a cloud or a wave is perfect, not by fixed geometry, but by being completely, spontaneously itself. Embrace the chaos, embrace the process, and recognize the profound truth that your worth was never, for a single moment, dependent on your performance. You simply are, and that is absolutely sufficient. The most persistent shadow cast by past mistakes is the feeling of guilt. Guilt is the emotional tool the ego uses to prolong suffering. It insists that you should still be punished for the past action, thereby preventing you from fully inhabiting the innocence of the present moment. This insistence on eternal punishment is the ego's final mechanism for maintaining control over time. But guilt, philosophically, is a profound misunderstanding of time and being. The self that performed the regretted action is not the self that exists now. The self is a process, a continuous flow, a river. You cannot step into the same river twice. To insist on carrying the guilt of 5 years ago is like insisting that the water that flowed under the bridge then must still be the water that is flowing under it now. It is a stubborn, futile refusal to acknowledge the reality of change. The spiritual problem with guilt is that it is fundamentally narcissistic. It is an obsession with the integrity of the ego. How could I have done that? I am supposed to be better. It is less about the action's harm and more about the damage to the self-image. True compassion, on the other hand, looks at the past action, acknowledges the harm, and then returns to the present to ensure the action is not repeated. Guilt clings. Compassion acts. The primary function of carrying guilt is to paralyze spontaneity. When you are heavily weighed down by the past, you cannot act freely or spontaneously in the now. Every potential action is first filtered through the lens of past failure. This neurotic hesitation destroys the effortless movement that is the hallmark of true, vital life. The fear that the past was flavored by mistakes, by choices that should have been avoided, is a fear that misunderstands the very nature of freedom. We believe freedom means the ability to choose among an infinite array of perfect possibilities, but that is merely the freedom of the dreamer. True freedom is the unconditional acceptance of necessity. It is the realization that your will, when fully aligned with the flow of the universe, is indistinguishable from destiny. The choices you made were the choices that had to be made by that particular organism in that particular moment, given its particular set of ignorances and knowledge. Your life, therefore, is not a series of flawed choices, but a perfect sequence of necessary events. This realization is not a doctrine of resignation, but a doctrine of profound peace. It means you can finally stop fighting the history of your own life. The ego, however, refuses to accept this. It insists on a parallel, flawless universe where a better version of you made a better decision. This mental split is the source of chronic regret. To abandon regret is to abandon the belief in this fictitious, flawless parallel self. You are free to be imperfect because imperfection was the only thing that could have led you to the knowledge you now possess. The failures were the necessary fertilizer for the present wisdom. The ultimate freedom is not the ability to choose differently in the past. That is an illusion of the ego. The ultimate freedom is the radical willingness to be here now with the unconditional acceptance of everything that has led to this moment. This is the only true liberation from the tyranny of time. We believe that we are the victims of time. We are rushing from the past, and we are anxiously rushing towards the future. But time is merely the rhythm of our attention. When attention is divided, when half of it is on past regret and half of it is on future anxiety, the present becomes thin, frantic, and unbearable. This is the trap of Chronos, the linear, measured time. We are trying to outrun the self we were yesterday and desperately catch the self we wish to be tomorrow. The cure is to shift your consciousness to Kairos, the eternal, qualitative time. Kairos is the moment when time stands still. It is the moment of full presence. When you are completely immersed in the action of the now, whether that action is working, laughing, or simply breathing, you are aligned with the rhythm of the cosmos. In Kairos, The question of regret is meaningless because there is only the effortless unfolding action. To stop regretting is to stop insisting that the universe should have provided you with guarantees. The universe provides process, not guarantees. It provides chaos, not certainty. And it is within that chaos, within that unpredictability, that the creative power of your own spontaneity is found. The past is the price paid for the knowledge you now hold. The only way to pay that price back is not through endless guilt, but through absolute unconditional participation in the living present. Let the dead past bury its own dead. Your business is the miraculous, terrifying, and glorious reality of this moment. The final realization of this philosophy is the collapse of the distinction between freedom and surrender. We imagine freedom as the opposite of surrender, as fierce self-determination. But true freedom is found through surrender, the surrender of the ego's demand for control. When you surrender the image, you surrender the guilt, and you surrender the fear of the past. This entire struggle, the pursuit of perfection, the anxiety of regret, the paralysis of choice, is the sound of the ego attempting to stop the river. But the river does not stop. It flows effortlessly, perfectly, utilizing every obstacle as a necessary condition for its continued movement. Your life, too, must be lived with this effortless effort, this wu wei, the action that arises spontaneously from your accepted nature. The perfect life is not a life without mistakes. It is a life lived in full acknowledgement of its mistakes, using them as fuel for the present. The perfect self is not the flawless image. It is the whole self, flaws included, operating with complete transparency. The time to begin this liberation is not when you feel perfect, not when you have secured all guarantees, but now. Because the process of living is the only true form of wisdom. The past is instruction, not a sentence, and the time to live, free from the sentence, is always and only now.